Indictment today of 12 senior Russian military officials accused of interfering in the 2016 U.S. presidential election. One of the accounts the Russians are accused of hacking belonged to the then Hillary Clinton campaign chairman, John Podesta. John is joining us on the phone right now. John, thanks for joining us. Give us your reaction to today's indictments.
Well, Wolf, look, I think from the beginning, at the heart of this matter were crimes that were committed against individual citizens, including myself, but what's more important, crimes that were committed against the American democracy. And I'm pleased that there's enough criminal evidence to bring an indictment, and whether or not we'll ever see any of those individuals brought to justice is a different question, because obviously I think Vladimir Putin, who ordered this operation, will try to protect them, keep them in Russia. But I think it's an important step and shows that at the heart of the Mueller investigation is a set of serious questions, and as I said, at the heart of it is criminal activity that occurred by the Russian government. The president will have the opportunity to confront President Putin with that when he sees him on Monday. I don't hold out too much hope that he'll take this any more seriously than he has over the last 18 months.
It's interesting that it wasn't just you that your email, your computer was hacked, but the indictment charges that these Russian military intelligence officers, they hacked the presidential campaign of Hillary Clinton, the Democratic National Committee, the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee, which works to elect Democrats to Congress, and they used that information, the hacked information, they used it under the names DC Leaks and Guccifer 2.0 and through another entity as well. The specific details in this indictment are really amazing. I know you haven't read the entire document, but it's very impressive the way they recreated step by step by step, John, what happened to you and to others.
Yeah, I think, Wolf, that we've known the general outlines of this from intelligence reports going back to right after the election, and indeed from the letter that the intelligence community issued even in advance of the election, that the Russians were up to no good here, and we've known the general outline. But this is, quite specific, and they've done the forensics, and obviously they believe they have the proof to prove the charges against these actors. The president likes to describe Mueller's operation as a witch hunt. Well, they've caught the witches here, and I hope at some point that they will actually be brought to justice.
One final question, John, before I let you go. Rod Rosenstein, the Deputy Attorney General, also said, and I'm quoting him, "There is no allegation in this indictment that the Americans knew they were corresponding with Russian intelligence officers." What's your reaction to that, that there were Americans who were communicating with Guccifer 2.0 and these other fake organizations, but they didn't know these organizations were being run by the Russian military intelligence unit?
Well, quite frankly, I take that with some skepticism, since the forensic, the independent experts who looked at the hacks, particularly the DNC hack, early on in July of 2016, identified Guccifer 2.0 and identified DC Leaks as Russian operations closely tied to GRU units operating there. So if they didn't know, that was willful ignorance on their part. But we'll have to wait and see whether Mr. Mueller believes that anybody else committed crimes, and again, he's played things pretty close to his chest. But I think time will tell, and if there's actually the capacity to have a trial, we'll learn more about who knew what and when.
Yeah, don't hold your breath, John, for these 12 Russian military intelligence operatives who are all presumably in Russia right now to be extradited or to voluntarily come to the United States.
If I were there, I wouldn't probably be, taking a vacation in Cyprus this summer.
Yeah, I suspect you're
to confront him over Russia's attack on the 2016 presidential election if he chooses to, which, keep him honest, that is a very big if. Today, Robert Mueller's grand jury handed up indictments that, for the very first time, directly connect 2016 campaign interference to the Kremlin itself. And the response so far from the White House, it doesn't mention the attack. It doesn't mention the Kremlin. It does not mention Vladimir Putin. It does not mention the Russians at all. In fact, all the White House did say was essentially nothing to do with us, nothing to see here. And I'm quoting now, today's charges include no allegations of knowing involvement by anyone on the campaign and no allegations that the alleged hacking affected the election result. This is consistent with what we've been saying all along. Oh, it sure is. And what they haven't been saying as well, that this was, a direct attack aimed at the heart of the country's democracy.
The indictment charges 12 Russian military officers by name for conspiring to interfere with the 2016 presidential election. According to the allegations in the indictment, the defendants worked for 2 units of the main intelligence directorate of the Russian General Staff, known as the GRU.
The White House says nothing about that. I mean, it's just stunning. 11 defendants are charged with conspiring to hack into computers, steal documents, and release them with the intent of interfering in the election. One of the 11, along with a 12th GRU officer, are charged with conspiring to infiltrate computers of organizations involved in administering elections. According to the indictment, the 2-part operation began with a spear phishing attack in early 2016 to gain access to the computers or the accounts of more than 300 people connected to the Clinton campaign and Democratic political groups, including campaign chairman John Podesta. Now, starting that June, the defendants allegedly distributed stolen documents through a bogus website that they created called dcleaks.com, a Facebook page and Twitter feed claiming they were, in the words of the indictment, American hacktivists. Once the Democratic National Committee announced it had been hacked, the Russians used the online moniker Guccifer 2.0, falsely claiming to be a lone Romanian hacker. Now, the indictment does not allege crimes by any Americans, nor that the conspiracy altered the vote count or change any election result. However, as we'll be talking about tonight, it hardly slams the door on the question of American collaboration, but just the mere fact of it is striking. A dozen Russian military intelligence officers charged today, which, if you're keeping track, makes it 191 criminal counts since the Mueller investigation began, 32 individuals and 3 companies charged. And perhaps more striking than that is this. The entire time that President Trump has been overseas, attacking our allies, but not criticizing Vladimir Putin, he presumably has known what would happen today.
I briefed President Trump about these allegations earlier this week. The president is fully aware of the department's actions today.
So just think about that. When he said this as he left for his trip, he may have already known.
So I have NATO, I have the UK, which is in somewhat turmoil, and I have Putin. Frankly, Putin may be the easiest of them all. Who would think?
Who would think? It's a funny question to ask, considering he may have already known that a dozen of Putin's spies were about to face charges. I mean, keep it honest, he also definitely knew about it when he was attacking America's NATO allies and when he was standing next to British Prime Minister Theresa May saying this.
I think I'd have a very good relationship with President Putin if we spend time together. And I may be wrong. Other people have said that didn't work out, but I'm different than other people. I think that we're being hurt very badly by the, I would call it the witch hunt. I would call it the rigged witch hunt after watching some of the little clips. I didn't get to watch too much because I'm here. It's a different time zone, to put it mildly. But after watching the people, that man that was testifying yesterday, I call it the rigged witch hunt. I think that really hurts our country, and it really hurts our relationship with Russia.
Again, just to be clear, that witch hunt, as the president called it, has now yielded 191 charges against 32 individuals and 3 companies, and the president knew about it. It certainly hasn't stopped him from talking or tweeting about the surge for women wearing pointy hats, wearing broomsticks. By our count, the president has now tweeted 84 times using the phrase witch hunt to describe the Russia probe or questions about Russia. His first tweet all the way back in May of 2016. And something else that happened in 2016, you might remember that today took on new significance. Here it is.
I will tell you this. Russia, if you're listening, I hope you're able to find the 30,000 emails that are missing. I think you will probably be rewarded mightily by our press. Let's see if that happens. That'll be next.
Ha 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 ha. That was July 27, 2016. Now let me just read from today's indictment. Quote, on or about July 27, 2016, the conspirators attempted after hours to spearfish for the first time email accounts at a domain hosted by a third-party provider and used by Clinton's personal office. At or around the same time, they also targeted 76 email addresses at the domain for the Clinton campaign. Now, neither the indictment nor any reporting we have thus far explicitly connects what the candidate said with what the Russians did. But the timing of it, I mean, it certainly raises questions because, not to put too fine a point on it, the president asked for Russia to get involved on the same day the indictment says the Russians got involved. Reaction now from someone who knows most about the Russian cyber attack, former Clinton campaign manager Robby Mook. Robby, what's your reaction to the news of these indictments?
Well, Anderson, on the one hand, this isn't terribly new information. We've known for a long time that the Russians, and specifically Russian intelligence, were behind the stealing of emails from the DNC and disseminating them to the media. But when we pull back, I think this is another really important chapter in a pretty serious set of events. In the life of this investigation, there have been 35 indictments now, including these. We have 5 people who pled guilty. 1 person is in prison. We also learned from this document some interesting timing that the day Donald Trump during the campaign called on the Russians to take Hillary Clinton's emails and put them out, the Russians went and tried to do exactly that.
Do you think the summit should be canceled?
I do. I think it's totally inappropriate for the President of the United States to meet privately with the Russian president when this overwhelming evidence has come out. Specific people have been named as to how the Russians were trying to meddle in this election. This is really hard for Donald Trump to do, but as the commander-in-chief of our country, he needs to put his own interests aside.
Obviously, the White House, says that the summit is going to go on. Assuming it does, what would you like to see President Trump say to Vladimir Putin, or how, confront him, or how would you want? What would you want to get out of it?
It's hard to see how it could be productive. I suppose if they were side by side at a press conference, President Trump could call out President Putin for what he did. Our understanding is this was all done at his direction. That's what is leaked out from intelligence. He could call on him to immediately extradite people involved. He could call on him to pledge that he will not do it anymore. But it's just hard to see practically how that would happen.
I know. I heard you say earlier that the past is the past. I mean, the fact the Justice Department alleges the Russian government hacked not just email servers but also state voting data. Does that raise any new questions for you?
We had a candidate personally targeted. We had a presidential campaign targeted. We had a national political committee targeted. We had the DCCC and House candidates targeted. I don't know that we talked about that enough. That had severe impact on those races. And then an official from DHS just said yesterday he believes that all 50 states were that the Russians were scanning them for vulnerabilities. We know they penetrated 21 state voting systems and actually stole data from one state. So, yeah, I mean, this is incredibly alarming, and it's all the more reason that it's disturbing that the president's not only not saying anything about it, he's having a meeting with the aggressor.
Yeah, and continually says, just kind of repeats, well, Vladimir Putin says they had nothing to do with this. That's generally what we've heard from the president when he speaks about this.
Yeah, and look, it's not like this is a leak. It's not like it's just some random allegation. This is a very long, very detailed indictment, and it's all the more embarrassing that the Republicans yesterday were trying to beat up on the very investigators that were doing this work.
You really think they're embarrassed?
Okay, fair. I hope so. They should be.
Okay.
But sadly, some won't be, probably.
Yeah, Robby Mook, thanks very much. Appreciate it.
Pleasure as always, Anderson. Thanks.
And this from CNN's